Thank you for listening. This episode has been brought to you by the Lewis and Henderson Real Estate Team of Aspen Snowmass Sotheby's International Realty.
Hello and welcome to She Brands the Land, where land meets legacy. I'm your host, Charlie Henderson. Before we get started today, can I ask you a small favor, please? If you like what you hear, can you please hit the follow button, and that way episodes will be delivered to you every Friday. We cover a wide range of topics of interesting people here in the Valley and beyond, and discussing just life in the Wild West. Today we're going a little off-piste, or maybe not, but we're digging into a topic that affects us all, and that is mental health and grief. I met Robyn a couple of months ago, and we both share a mutual friend who lost his son. We've all lost someone or something in the past, and we're currently living in a time when the planet is in a tiny bit of a turmoil. I thought it would be interesting to have Robyn on to dig a little deeper into this. So welcome to the show, Robyn.
Thank you so much, Charlie. Happy to be here.
Great. So, my first and always only standard question is, were you born in the Valley? And if you weren't, where did you come from and what brought you here?
Yeah. So, no, I was born in St. Louis, Missouri. I'm a Midwestern gal. I was a place actually that I never felt at home, even though, it's my beloved family home. But when I was 11 years old, my older sister came to college in Colorado, in Boulder, and I came to visit her, and I got off the plane literally in Denver, and I just had this somatic sense of feeling home in Colorado. And so I did later come to college in Boulder as well, and spent a lot of time in this valley at that time. And then later, a while later after college and graduate school, I was living in the Bay Area, actually, which I absolutely love also. But I was having trouble breathing, and I ended up, long story short, with some medical issues, which were misdiagnosed for a while, but I thought it was because of the pollution in the city and the fast pace. And I just, really felt like I needed to change. And, it was not long after my mom had died. And so I set up my 6-month internship for my physical therapy master's at the time. That was my initial career, and at Valley View Hospital in Glenwood Springs in 1994. And that's what brought me here. I was probably one of the only people at the time, and maybe not many of us since, that lived in Aspen and commuted to Glenwood. But I've basically been here ever since. I've had a few jaunts out, but I raised my daughters here, and so it's been home ever since.
How old are your daughters?
20, 18.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
They grew up in a beautiful place.
Yeah, absolutely. They're so lucky.
Yeah. So you call yourself a guide, mentor, teacher, companion, dream worker. That's complex. What does that entail?
Well, honestly, as someone I've been through a lot of difficult challenges and passages in my life, and many of us have. But as someone who's been through a lot of hard things, I'm just really passionate. I've kind of found my way through various channels and different mentors and lineages and things that I have followed. That I'm passionate about supporting people through life's most difficult challenges. And for some reason, people ask me, how did I become a grief counselor? It was one of those things that it's not like I sought that out. It just found me. And I just have found that, it is part of my calling. And so I just so in whatever way I meet people in whatever support they need, whether it's guidance, whether it's mentoring, whether it's just simply companioning. I mean, it's not that simple, but it can be companioning people through different things. And the teacher part is I have cultivated a framework and things that, that I have learned, through my own studies and cultivated my own framework that has been a tried and true container for navigating difficult life passages and reclaiming grief as part of a fully lived life. So I do teach that framework to both personally and professionally to people, to whether it's in their own personal life or people want to share it professionally in their realm or avenues that they work in. And the dream work part has been a passion. Dream is really, I work with dreams, like nighttime dreams that are remembered. And that's been a lifelong passion. It interweaves into everything that I do. But I've had a lifelong relationship with my own dreams. One of my primary mentors, Jeremy Taylor, was a internationally renowned dream worker. It's been a huge part of my life and my personal life and growth and professional life for almost 3 decades now, and professionally. And so, yeah, it's just a creative, interesting way to explore the inner world.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm so curious about that because sometimes you have dreams and like there's zero relevance to anything in your life, and people that you haven't seen for 5 years or 10 years, and all of a sudden they're in your dream. I mean, that to me is pretty fascinating.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So you say you hold spaces for grief, transformation, and soulful living through retreats, immersions, community rituals, and practitioner training. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Like for example, like a community ritual or a retreat, because I just interviewed this really interesting Cheyenne person, Cheyenne woman, and that's so much part of Indigenous life. But yeah, that's a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, so to start, as I said, I'm really passionate about reclaiming grief as part of our fully lived lives. It's something that I think has gotten disenfranchised or, isolated in our cultural ways of being. We're not role modeled well how to be with grief in particular or difficult life passages. And we're kind of, it's become so isolated. We've become so isolated that we sort of try and deal with our grief over here and either deal with it or suppress it or, bury it in some kind of way to get back to our quote good life over here. And, in my own personal life passages and also in the Indigenous traditions and wisdom that I have studied and spent time in rural villages, mostly West African, is kind of been, and Native American also have dipped my toes in, but is that, this communal way of being is something that's really been lost and has really created a lot of suffering and a lot of isolation and the lonely and alone feeling when we go through difficult things. So I'm just really passionate about bringing people together in authentic spaces and creating containers that people feel supported, connected, and compassionate environments that we cultivate together so that we can be authentic with each other. So I do that through retreats and community-based rituals. A lot of times I use the body a lot so that it's not just all about talking and explaining ourselves or trying to understand even ourselves in the intellectual way, but really kind of feel our way through things and be seen and witness each other in our authenticity. And it's really profoundly transformative in all the different ways that I've, either shared it, offered it, and, worked with people and communed with people in community in these ways. It's very powerful for all of us.
You have a quote on your website. It says, "I came to seek grief not simply as something to endure, but as a profound, sacred, and natural part of living a fully lived life. It revealed new dimensions of love, creativity, and awareness that I may not have discovered otherwise. It takes us to another level, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, we learn most about ourselves, I think, through our hardest passages.
Let's dig into grief a little bit more. And that's the reason why I asked you to come on this podcast, because I think it is central to what is happening in this valley and what people are feeling. I think we are all grieving the loss of this valley and what it used to be like. I just read Roger Merle's column this morning, and of course, his weekly column, Blumenthal's on Snowmass Village, Beth Anarella. I mean, it's a weekly topic for us, and how the billionaires have changed our lives and the ripple effect that the COVID effect had on this valley, displacement, lack of affordable housing, land banking, so we can't recreate on it anymore, and kind of the erosion of the middle class. You name it, we're all feeling the sadness. And I'm sure you deal with this every day with your clients, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the people often come, and I work with people or support and companion people through, whether it's the death or loss of a loved one, or, a life-threatening diagnosis, or, any number of traumatic, life-changing experiences. And, the daily life challenges are a compounding factor to our grief, and not only in our community, in our daily life community, and the changes that we're seeing in this valley, but then collectively, environmentally, and all the difficulties that we encounter going on in the world currently. It's a lot to integrate right now. It's a lot to metabolize right now. So it absolutely shows up in ways that I'm working with people. And sometimes it's just the losses of what we've known, of what we knew this valley to be, or life to be, loss of parts of ourselves and connection to our place and land. So yes, it absolutely shows up, and I think, again, like, there, what I find is that we have so lost connection with authentic connection, with encountering our deeper feelings, like encountering the inner wilderness of ourselves, the inner landscape of ourselves. And part of this navigating this, all the changes that we're encountering in this valley is, first of all, it's dealing with the unknown. We're dealing with a lot of uncertainty. What's it going to be like? What's it going to look like? And also the suffering that it's already creating. But there's a way that we can keep the conversation, or the almost the challenge of it on a more surface level. And sometimes it can even get into a habitual realm of complaining about things. And not that that's bad, because we have to air our grievances or whatever. But the point I'm trying to make is that what we've lost connection with more of is the connection with our deeper feelings and our communal way of living. And yes, we are such a tight community, but some of what's gotten lost is the fabric of that community, because it's getting, I don't know, there's just holes in it because of all the changes that are happening. And so it's even more important to find connections and places and people and spaces that we can really be with our deeper feelings of what this is stirring. And then learn to, or remember that, to trust ourselves, one, that we can make it through hard things, that we can do hard things, and trust each other, and to stay connected with what really matters to us, our values. And, not that that solves all the problems, absolutely doesn't. Otherwise they would be solved because we all have, deep values. But, but it's just it's the reminder to stay connected with our feelings and to share with each other on that deeper level.
So in Roger's column today, he really just talks about the mountains that are so special for us. And I think that's why we are here. I mean, we are essentially a community who loves to recreate, who likes hiking and skiing and trail riding and all that kind of stuff. And that's our community. That's how we stay healthy, mentally healthy, physically healthy, and everything. And it's really not about things. It's more about experiences, I think, which is at the heart of everything. So I like that, the way you phrase that inner wilderness, because we live in a wilderness and that's what drew us here. But, what's happening on the inner wilderness side is important. Mental health in this valley was already an issue. It's always been, but like the suicide rate here is really high. Can you tell us why it affects mountain towns like ours so profoundly?
Yeah. I mean, I can't claim to know all the answers, but I can just say what I see and what I experience, when I'm working with people and families who've lost family members or loved ones to suicide in this valley, which, yes, it's way more prevalent than any of us want to hear about or admit. But it's hard when we live in a beautiful resort community. There's this maybe belief or something that, I mean, we're all, many of us, I mean, at least I can relate to, many of us are so grateful that we get to live here. We've chosen to be here, or we work our butts off to be here because it is so special. But there's almost like this expectation that we're supposed to be always living the good life because we're here and because it's so beautiful and so incredible. And the riches are so abundant here, the riches of nature and the riches of, everything you just mentioned, all the things that we love. But also, the wealth that surrounds us, everywhere. It like pervades everything for the most part in our valley. And for some of us, it can feel like golden handcuffs. For some, for some, it can feel like, something just out of reach, that it seems like it's just so close that, we just, long for it, or want it and just can't quite get it. And so the pressures become so intense. And also, there's mountain people, we're hardy people, and, there's a different type of courage and strength that is required to speak up when you're going through something difficult, and again, we're just not role modeled well of how to do that, and that it's okay to reach out when we're not at the top of our game. So I just think the pressures are so intense here, and it's so in our face all the time that it really eats at people. And if you don't have good practices or supports or connections, or that, just if you don't have what you need to really feel supported in the more difficult challenges and stressors of daily life here, it can eat away at our mental health.
Yeah. I had a guest on, Connor Coleman. He's a good friend of mine, and we were talking about mental health in the ag community, right? Especially amongst like men and cowboys who really find it so hard to ask for help. I know that's an area he's going to be exploring more, like conversations, community gatherings and stuff like that. But
It's great.
how do we get the message out there that there is this kind of support, that you don't have to do this alone?
Yeah. I think, we are lucky in this valley. We have amazing resources in this valley. Like the Hope Center, who, provides suicide prevention and support and lots of different mental health support, and Pathfinders, which is very near and dear to my heart. I've been a Pathfinders grief counselor for 20 years. This year I've worked with Pathfinders. And so, and there's others as well. And there's many mental health providers in this valley, amazing providers. And so, which is hard because, a lot of the providers are full too, because the need is so high right now. But I think the more that we can just, again, get used to talking about things and normalizing reaching out and getting support and help, and share with each other the resources, not be afraid to share with each other that there are resources available, or just not be afraid to just not even know what to say to a friend or a family member or a loved one or whoever. I don't really know what to say, when someone's going through something difficult, but I'm just here with you, and I'd love to, be with you and help find the support that's needed. So, it's this, the help is out there, the support is out there, but I think some of it just comes down to just all of us practicing getting a little bit more uncomfortable, like having difficult conversations or listening to difficult things or sharing resources that, you don't know if it's wanted or not. I don't know. I think that's my thought about it. Yeah.
I think on a positive note, I mean, we have such an amazing community. We really do. Coming back to the this young lady, She Who Makes Marks, Cheyenne lady that I interviewed last week. I mean, how she talked about how her community relies on each other, how they go to their elders for help and wisdom. We have a lot of transplants in the valley here. I know I'm one many years back, but having a strong community really gets you through. I know I just experienced this in real time. It was so wonderful to see how a ranching community just came together to fiercely defend and protect one of their own. And it was just, whilst it was hard to go through it and feel all those feelings, on the other side of that, it was like, whoa, look what just happened. Like we all just which is cool. So you have a method, it's called the 4 Paths of Transformation. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I call it the 4 Paths of Soulful Transformation.
Okay.
So I have a doctorate of ministry in creation spirituality. It's an interspiritual tradition. It draws from the mystical teachings of all the world's religions and spiritual lineages and indigenous wisdom and even the wisdom of nature and cosmology. And out of that lineage, there is an ancient, tenets of the 4 paths of creation spirituality. And so that's something that I've been really steeped in, this kind of ancient wisdom that came through my studies and has just really moved me for the decades after, I have studied and explored and practiced with it. And so over the years, through my own personal experience and through the decades of working with so many people, through their most difficult life passages, and also just, spiritual growth and transformation and evolution, I have cultivated a psycho-spiritual framework out of the 4 paths of creation spirituality and made it relevant to daily life. I've just kind of created a framework that has languaging and meaning that we can all relate to, that we can lean into to support us through difficult times, but also just to reframe our lives into this full spectrum experience and this kind of spiraling growth and evolution that we go through over a lifetime, the different transitions, thresholds, changes, and growth that we do. And so how I've named the 4 paths of soulful transformation are resource, which are the things that bolster and strengthen us, the things that really give us a sense of that, that deeper sense of awe and wonder, the reason we live here, excuse me, in the mountains, and, just the things that really bolster us. It could be nature, it could be music, it could be poetry, it could be our animals or our children or our land, whatever the things that really, help us feel connected in a really profound way. That's the path of resource. And those are the things, like, we have to remember to savor those things and kind of fill our bank of those things, because so we can draw on them, and we go through life sometimes and we sort of forget, even we're doing all these things and wonderful things, but we forget to savor and really linger with the things that really fill us up. So that part of this spiraling path is to really savor those things. That's the path of resource. The path of release is the authentic expression of, authentic emotion or feelings. And it's kind of more geared towards really authentically expressing the more difficult emotions, because those are the ones that are more, kind of we've lost connection with, or we've sort of, dissociated from. So the authentic expression of difficult emotions. So it's a place to make room. Again, reclaim grief as part of a fully lived life. This is a natural part of our experience. We, the woman that you spoke with, the Cheyenne woman, and how they connect with their communities and their ancestors, and they commune in ways that includes, support through the difficult times. And that's something that we have, again, not really kept as part of our cultural, sort of modern Western experience. So making room for that expression, the movement. Emotion is meant to move through us. So it's not released to get rid of difficult things and feelings. It's to let them move through us. So that when we allow them to move, and we have ways to express and share and kind of almost do a pour of our buckets or our, boiling pots or whatever, it creates some spaciousness, and that leads to the path of renewal, which that spaciousness, when we've kind of relieved that valve of the difficult things and let out some steam or whatever, it allows for shifts in energy or creative inspiration, or, discovering new sense of meaning, or, what's really important in life, or what's really important to you, or, just really understanding something new that may be emerging, like that quote I said, that we may never have experienced or encountered if we hadn't gone through or expressed and allowed to move the difficult things. So that when those things arise in us, the things that really are emerging, that are new and have meaning, and a refreshing sense of, shift in energy or focus, awareness, that leads to this, the 4th path is the path of return, which is those things that have really landed for us. What are the things that we're going to practice and really integrate and really continue to be in service to ourselves and to each other in smaller and bigger ways, like in the people that we are around, our friends and family members, our community members, or, in larger initiatives, like writing columns in the paper, or, whatever inspires us to be in service to our community and to ourselves and our own growth and evolution. So this is a spiraling evolutionary framework. So there's nothing linear about it. We can find ourselves, we can relate to each path at any given time, but it's a helpful framework to discern where we might be primarily in any given moment, and what we might need to for movement to keep for us to keep moving through. I always talk about like finding the through line through grief, through difficult times, through challenges and thresholds in our life. What's the through line? So we need something to lean into where we don't just feel stuck in any one place. And for some people, that might be sort of like being really positive or being really up and, all of that. But really, that's not allowing space for the more difficult things. So you can kind of get stuck in many different places in this framework. But how do we remember that it's all important for us? Full spectrum life experience where we grow and we change and we discover more meaning and when we have something to lean into to help support that. So that kind of is the background or the backbone of everything that I offer, whether I'm working individually with someone or I'm working with groups or community rituals or retreats or whatever it is. That's kind of how I navigate and share so people can kind of even feel into the framework, even if it's not explicitly named.
I think people are really longing for that, in general, this authenticity. I run the front of the house for the Snowmass Rodeo, and the joy that I see with our families in that night is pretty profound. They come, they're connected, which is, for me, I think the key, which is why I'm so passionate about Western heritage, is they do feel connected to each other, to the animals, to everybody else. It's a joyful time, and people leave and they have the biggest smiles on their faces. But it's a part where the community comes together, and everybody feels equal, and that's really important. But and my point of saying this is I'm going to go to this next space. So Aspen, good old Aspen. Let's talk about Aspen, because it's a dichotomy. I mean, I feel like I live a life spanning two worlds myself. I try and spend as much time on the ranch for me that I possibly can, because that's healthy for me and where my space and my happiness comes from, and my connection with the woman and the people that I ride with and socialize with over there. But I'm a realtor in Aspen, and I do Aspen things, right? So I like art and culture and fashion, but I live in between these things. And I go up there and all these influencers are expounding this Aspen dream, There's this lovely young woman who has created this whole Instagram thing called Well Dressed Aspen or something like that. I was featured on there just because it was at the rodeo, and I dress up for the rodeo. I'm the person in the front of the house that everybody sees, right? But it's not a facade, because I love fashion. However, my profession, for example, being a broker in Aspen, we have to exude this face of luxury and wealth, right? But I don't think most people realize what it takes to be a realtor in this valley. I mean, you're an independent contractor. You have to get up every single day and create business. If you have a bad year, you're not earning. So you have to play the part. And so how do people deal with this challenge? I mean, again, it's this facade, like, I'm successful, you should hire me to sell your house, right? We have to put that out there.
Yeah.
But in our authentic selves, when we're like half dying because, it's just judging ahead. What would you say to somebody, in that position where it's really tough?
Yeah, it is really tough. And I really appreciate you bringing that up. And I love that you were featured on Well Dressed Aspen, because you do have such an amazing fashion sense. And I just, and love hearing the full spectrum of your life and experience. And I'm, and I hear what you're saying about being a real estate broker in Aspen. I've over the years that I've worked in this valley, I've worked with a number of real estate brokers. And so I'm familiar with that image that is, that it's like, that needs to be upheld for, professionalism and for, the image that's portrayed and, put out there and, this, uh, what's the word? Just this drive and also this, success driven, or productivity, I guess, that is so in your world, And so I've worked with some brokers over the years, as I said, who've been going through very difficult passages, whether loss or illness or whatever it is. And, and it's hard. It's hard to, how do you navigate through that image, and how do you navigate through the expectations that are required, or, for all the reasons that you said, to maintain income or to maintain, clients, or to maintain the image or whatever. And so, I think every single hard passage we go through is stretching us in some way. And so I always come back to this 4-path framework, the 4 paths of soulful transformation is, how can we lean into something that really allows us to be authentic and true, at least with ourselves or our close inner circle of people. So not everybody has to know or be privy to every single detail of what we all go through, and, what brokers go through or whatever, or ranchers, or for that matter as well. But, to find some ways of stretching, I can relate to it too, but like stretching ourselves into new ways of being and being connected with our deeper authentic self, and what is trying to come forward, what is trying to emerge. And I think there's, we create these adaptive strategies and coping strategies and, and images and all these things that can keep us almost, a little bit imprisoned in a way. I mean, they're very, they're very important in some ways. So I'm not saying, to just get rid of it or whatever, but it's like, what are the ways that we can open the gates a little bit, so that more of ourselves can be revealed. And then we get to choose, when we have more awareness of what's trying to come forward, or create more space in kind of safe and connected and compassionate spaces to be really authentic with ourselves and our communities. Then it's like, and what comes forward through that path of renewal, what's stretching us, trying to come, trying to grow us in certain ways. And then we get to choose how we integrate that in daily life, in our professional life, in our world. And so I think it creates some sense of agency, where I think sometimes we can feel like we've lost agency because we're inside of this image.
Yeah.
Right. And so anyway, just finding spaces to, again, just come back to feeling and authenticity, and find ways to let that be expressed, and new things to grow and emerge.
Yeah. That loss of agency is, I think, central to, I think, what's happening in this valley. Like, people are angry, they're frustrated, they're sad at kind of the transformation of the valley, right? And so, obviously we've got to be careful that that's not spreading and then sucking us all down. We have to try and lift each other up in a lot of ways. But also, I almost feel like it's becoming like a muscle that we are now starting to get a little stronger, like, and more resilient, because the change has happened. It continues to happen, but we're having to kind of develop some resiliency and some strength to kind of, move forward banding together. You know, a lot of people, I think the biggest thing is like, well, if we can't afford to live here, where do we go? And what do we do? I mean, think about it. If you've lived in this valley for 60 years, where are you going to go? Yeah, you might be able to cash out, but where can you go? And then you have to start over again. Or like, you know, wanting to have your kids come live in the valley. I think it's a little easier now. You know, when I think about like when I first got here, there were very few, I mean, except for like in the resort kind of job, you know, valet, whatever, there weren't that many opportunities for young people to stay here. All the young folks left. But now, you know, the positive side of it is there's more remote work. So now we have a more robust, like 20 to 40-year-olds where they can actually make a living and stay here or live with us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So there's a lot of, I think, positive stuff that can come out of this, not just the swirling, I talked about it this morning, the swirling toilet bowl of grief and anger, right?
Exactly.
We have to try and lift ourselves up. We have to try and find new pathways of, you know, we can stay here, but in a different way. And I know so many really incredibly strong women who, you know, it's been hard, but it's like a river. You move like water and you go where you can go.
Exactly.
And in different stages of your life, you know, and I'm so grateful for, you know, people like you in your profession that, you know, this is something that you do for a living. You your commitment to our community, you know, all that kind of stuff. It's really important. And, you know, the older I get, the more I realize how it's community is so important. And honestly, Robyn, that's what's driving this podcast is I want to tell the stories of people that came before us and what they're passing on.
Yeah.
And then also telling the stories of the people that are here now, like us, you know, in this valley who are just making it work and holding on to whatever we can. So I think that's important because people, you know, maybe somebody who's listening today will hear what you're doing and will kind of reach out, or somebody who listens to the podcast will send it to a friend and say, you know, there's help out there. There are people. There's your community. Just share it with somebody that you're having a hard time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad you're doing this podcast and really elevating the importance of community and conversation and, you know, and also just remembering, as you mentioned, you know, that part of our community is turning towards the people who've come before us, you know, are generationally and also ancestors and, you know, people who've lived on this land. I mean, that's one thing Indigenous wisdom really teaches us that we have not incorporated into our daily lives at all, but just that community includes nature, includes the trees, includes our ancestors and our loved ones who've come before us, and also the people who are just right around us all the time, and including the animals and beings and all of that. So it's tuning into it and making connections and listening to soulful podcasts and turning towards each other for support and guidance and compassion and companioning. So thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks, Robyn. I do think that obviously the symbolism of like the aspen grove is we are all connected, and we need to take care of each other.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you for coming on the show, Robyn.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Your website is called robynhubbard.com. 2 B's on that. Sorry. Yeah, Hubbard. 2 B's on that. And the method is called the 4 Paths of Transformation. You can find Robyn's contact in the show notes. And again, if you have a friend in need, maybe they could enjoy listening to today's episode and take something away from it. But at the end of the day, we all just have to stick together like aspen trees.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, Robyn. And
thank you so much, Charlie.
Thank you. Giddy up, everyone, and be well. This podcast was brought to you by One Chick Cowgirl Productions, keeping the Wild West alive.